Well, I was on Nantucket speaking with the Nantucket Independent, potentially with the Nantucket Enquirer, and then meeting with some of our supporters to launch a grassroots effort to get people to come out to the hearing that the Department of Public Utilities will be having on the contract that Cape Wind signed with National Grid that will absolutely raise electric rates for residences and businesses on Nantucket at a time of high unemployment, economic turmoil, and just at a time when people can't afford to pay more on their utility bills.
Okay.
And the hearing is at Nantucket High School, Monday, June 21st at 6 p.m. And I absolutely encourage all Nantucket residents and business owners to go out to the Department of Public Utilities hearing and weigh in and say we can't afford to pay more for Cape Wind.
Okay. So I guess my next question would be, when does it end for you guys, really? I mean, it's been a long fight.
It's been a very long fight.
10 years?
It ends when we win and successfully protect Nantucket Sound from industrialization and protect Nantucket residents and residents throughout Massachusetts from paying even higher bills for the benefit of a private developer.
I understand. But don't you feel like you're really up against the wall right now? I mean, really?
No, not at all.
I mean, you've done everything that you can to try to stop it, and it just keeps going.
It does keep going,
but...
but...
At the point where you're at, is this the final step for you guys?
Well, at this point, it's been a purely political decision. Secretary Salazar of the Department of Interior basically chose to ignore his own federal agencies and all the historic agencies that weighed in and said Nantucket Sound is a national treasure. It's unparalleled historically. It's sacred tribal land. And instead of going to an alternative location and getting a project actually built, he made a decision to approve Cape Wind, which was purely a political one, that's only prolonging the opposition and bringing the battle out of the political arena and into the courts.
Why do you say it's political?
It's been purely political because several historic agencies, all of them, the National Park Service, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, the Mass Historic Commission, they all said, this place is unparalleled historically. You've got National Historic Landmarks. The waters of Nantucket Sound themselves are sacred land. It's a traditional cultural property. And despite that, and despite the fact that all of the stakeholders that oppose the Cape Wind site in the center of Nantucket Sound endorse an alternative where those priorities to develop renewable energy, respect tribal rights, and maintain historic preservation were compatible. They're not compatible in Nantucket Sound. Why
did the Army Corps of Engineers approve it?
The Army Corps of Engineers did not approve it. The Army Corps of Engineers was the initial federal agency that was responsible for the review.
But they signed off on it, though.
No, what they did was they issued a draft environmental impact statement that was a review of Cape Wind back in 2004, maybe.
They did what their job,
yes, but in 2005, that authority was taken away from them. In fact, they didn't have the authority to convey property rights for renewable energy projects in federal waters. So the Energy Policy Act of 2005 gave that responsibility to the Department of Interior. And we've seen what has happened with the Department of Interior recently. Lax oversight of the BP situation in the Gulf of Mexico,
isn't that
overly cozy.
Isn't that more of a reason why we should support it?
No, it's absolutely...
Because of aren't we all responsible for BP? It's not just BP's problem, is it?
It's the Department of Interior's review
that didn't... Don't you think that it's... I'm going to give you like a devil's advocate here, because, when that happened, I was like, you can't just blame everybody. I mean, we are suckers for oil. We just got to have as much oil as we can, and we're not doing really anything that compares to what we should be doing, which is being a little bit more responsible.
What we're doing
and not burning.
What we're doing here is creating a mini BP situation. You're basically, this project, let me finish, this project introduces the risk of an oil spill into Nantucket Sound, obviously on a smaller scale, but the project itself has 65,000 gallons of oil on the turbines and on the transformer substation, plunked in the middle of essential fish habitat, a very productive fishery, an environmentally sensitive area. On top of that, you've got a situation where home heating oil is brought from the mainland to Nantucket, 1.3 million gallons. Same agency has not put in place an oil spill response plan. We've seen in the Gulf, the situation is worst case scenarios can and do happen, and this has not been planned for. The towns, which would be first responders, don't have the containment capability to deal with such a disaster. And Cape Wind's own studies said that the oil would hit the shorelines of the Cape and Islands in as little as 4.8 hours.
But
so it's a much smaller...
It's a volcano that's underneath the ground like that one. I mean, I know what you're saying. And have there been any other oil spills in Denmark? Do we have actual indications and actual...
Well, you've got a very different situation because here you've got basically 3 land masses surrounding the proposed footprint with traffic patterns going between the mainland of Cape Cod and the islands. So you've got a very different situation here where it's a much more heavily trafficked area. You've got 3 million passengers traveling by ferry alone. You've got numerous recreational boaters. You've got, fishermen. So it's a very different scenario than what you have in Europe, and that's the point. This site is a national treasure. This site is very unique, not just historically, but from usage patterns and the fact that it's a sound. It's not open ocean. And on top of that, you've got the situation now where Cape Wind has been saying for years, wind is free, we'll save you money, and they just announced the terms of their contract with National Grid, selling the power at 21 cents per kilowatt hour versus today's prices of 8 cents. Without federal stimulus money, that number goes up to 24 cents. So you're looking at triple the rates going to basically fund a private developer that would desecrate sacred land, introduce public safety risks, introduce the risk of an oil spill, and threaten the environment.
How long have you been doing this for?
Since 2003, I've been involved in the Alliance to Protect Nantucket Sound.
Why did you get involved?
Because I firmly believe that Nantucket Sound is unique, is worthy of protection, and shouldn't be sacrificed for the benefit of a private developer when there are alternative locations that make much more sense.
You have a full-time job?
This is my full-time job. This is actually my 2 times full-time job. The economic impact to Nantucket alone will be $1.4 million increased electric rates in year 1. $1.4 million. That's about $60 per average resident.
Well, let's just say that that's the price we got to pay for clean energy for the time being until we have more clean energy. Let's just assume that for a second. But what about property values on the Cape? Are they going to go up?
Property values go up?
I mean, are they going to go down?
Well, the study that has been done that showed both a decline in tourism of several $100 million, which would equate to a loss of about 2,500 jobs, as well as a vast impact on property rates, property values. And basically what that does is it shifts the burden because the property values on the waterfront, as you pointed out, would go down further, basically meaning that the inland properties would be the ones that would have to make up any difference in tax rates.
So if you fail to do this, I mean, what's the steps? I mean, you must have a plan now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I've said, we've taken it out of the political arena, and unfortunately now it's going to be a legal battle based on the facts, and I firmly believe that based on the facts, we will prevail, and there are better alternatives. It's not an issue of renewable energy. This is an issue of protecting Nantucket Sound when there's better alternatives. So there's multiple lawsuits that will be going forth, not just from the Alliance, but from various towns, airports, tribes, fishing groups. So bringing lawsuits against the Department of Interior.
You're still going to keep going with the lawsuits?
Absolutely, absolutely. And then the other piece is that the Department of Public Utilities has the opportunity to reject the contract, the exorbitantly priced above market contract that, as I said, will affect Nantucket residents by raising their electric bills. And they absolutely need to go out to that hearing and say, we can't afford to pay more.
Is it possible that they could still build these things while you guys were trying to sue them? Is it possible that they could start working on them?
They have. I mean, we could go forward and file an injunction if construction were imminent, but at this point there's a number of...
But everything's been passed. It sounds that way. It sounds
no,
like
absolutely not. The only thing that's been approved is the record of decision from the Department of Interior. They still have to go through several plans, several other processes in order to get an actual lease. All of the state and local permits for Cape Wind are sitting at the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court. There's been no final decision there. The FAA decision of no hazard will go through an appeal process as well. So the opposition to this project will continue for some time. And again, it's unfortunate that Secretary Salazar didn't take a leadership position and relocate the project to another site that was endorsed by the majority of the stakeholders and actually result in getting a project built instead of years of litigation and prolonged opposition.
I'll leave that last word.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.